Welcome back, crew. It's October, and while it may be a little out of order, we are still diving into the Free League's Alien RPG system. Now, I know we've already done our actual play, and if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. I'll throw a link down in the description. It was a blast. Me and my crew loved it. It was definitely one of my favorite games we've done with this series so far. I love sci-fi. I love some of the rules they put in place to kind of amp that horror element up, and that's really what we're going to be diving into today. We're going to be going over the stress and panic system and how that plays into kind of bringing the sci-fi or the horror into your sci-fi game. This system actually provides a couple cool tools for their game mothers, as they call them, to be able to kind of think about the horror aspect and kind of get just little ways they can bring it into the game and try to keep players on the edge of their seats. So we're going to touch on that, some things I did, but maybe well or poorly on there too, just to ratchet up that tension and bring the horror side of it into the game. But since we are doing a little out of order, I do want to give a shout out to November's game of the month. We are going to be covering Pinnacle's Savage World system. We're doing the base book. This is one of the big reasons I wanted to give it a shot is just how many different setting books they've got. Because if you're not familiar with Savage Worlds or Suede, as it's also known, it's a really customizable system, and there's just settings upon settings. Whether you want to be cowboys dealing with the occult, or sci-fi and Rift, or superheroes, which I bought the superhero book too. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge superhero fan, and between Mutants and Masterminds, Mask, and a couple other systems I've played, I really want to kind of play all the different superhero systems, and I've heard really good things about Suede. But for our game of the month, we're going to be focusing on that base system. So come through for that. Check out this amazing and customizable system. I'm really looking to see how much fun we can have tweaking it to our own ends, too. And we'll be having our actual play game on November 30th. Same drill. We're going to go all into how to play this system. But then on that live play game, we are going to be giving away a copy of the PDF of the system so you can bring this game back to your crew. Because that's really one of the big whys behind our channel is I wanted to play a lot of new systems, and I feel like a lot of people kind of get into TTRPGs and get stuck with or into one system, and that's just all they play. That was myself included for a while, and I just wanted to branch out. I thought, hey, why don't I bring some people with me? Give away some free PDFs too during our live plays. So check me out on T&J Gaming at Twitch. There'll be a link down in the description too. That's where all of our live play games are held. And even outside of our game of the months, we do some Star Wars Tuesday games with different systems on that side. And we play a mix of different systems. We got a mask game, hopefully, coming up in 2 weeks, depending on if I get enough players. So stay tuned for that side. But let's dive into it. So with this system, kind of ratcheting up that horror, bringing kind of the stress and panic that you see. If you watch the movies, you see the characters kind of going through this as they're progressing through whatever story they're in. You see that stress kind of start to get to them, start to ramp up as the dread and everything builds. And you probably, if you're like me and you wanted to kind of try to rebuild that for your players, kind of give them that movie-like experience, and it's a little bit worrying, I bet, for a lot of players, for DMs, I'll say, because me included, because I dabble a little bit in horror, but I've never really run a full-on horror game. I was a little worried about it, but the system on this side does really give some cool just pieces of advice and resources, and the stress and panic pieces really kind of help get your players in that mindset on their own. So I really liked it. So we're going to dive into that piece. Just going to show off a little bit of what they can do on that side. So we're going to take a look at stress first. And if you watch the mechanics video, stress is really a cool dual-edged sword. We're going to go over how you can get stress, but one of the big key components with stress is that when you have points of stress, you get to roll additional stress dice. Whenever you make an ability check or like a ranged combat roll or anything like that, you get to add those stress dice, which in theory are hopefully going to help you get some more successes. But with the stress dice, they come with the risk. If you get a 1 on the dice, or if you're playing with the official dice, you get the facehugger symbol. If that happens, you have to roll a panic roll. So it was really cool to see as my players are going through with that one, just as their stress mounted up, how much those panic rolls came into play. And it was just kind of like, it was just kind of seeing them because as if you've watched the movies, like the characters, like even like the rough and tough Marines, the hardened captains, they start to break down a little bit. You start to see that stress coming through. You start to see panic in their eyes. And I liked how the system reflected that and gave my players some easy avenues to RP in. But overall, with stress, so a couple ways you can get it. My favorite is you can push a skill roll. We touched on that in the mechanics episode, but if you need to re-roll to get some successes, and successes can be hard to come by even with a lot of dice, you get 1 point of stress, and you get a whole or re-roll anything that's not a 6. So a lot of my players push those rolls. You saw that stress creep up on them. If you fire a burst of automatic fire, we went over that a little bit in the mechanics episode too. Just really kind of a cool way if you have multiple targets. My players didn't really get to use it. I planned a little bit too long of a one shot for time, and my players hammed it up a little bit too, which was really cool as well. But definitely for some, if you get a whole floor full of face huggers, that it may be worth it to get a little point of stress and full auto on them. You also get it for if you take damage. So DMs, remember this piece. I forgot this while I was running because there was supposed to be some more stress. A few of my players were taking on that. But yeah, if they take a point of damage, they get a point of stress, even if they already get stress from something else. So remember that piece on there because you don't want them missing out on that experience. They also get it if they go without food, sleep, or water. For our adventure, it was pretty contained in a quick bit of space, so we didn't get into that portion. If they perform a coup de grace, so finishing off an enemy, whether it be human or alien, on that side, they get an extra point of stress there, just from kind of just even hardened kill. Unless you're a hardened killer, finishing something off like that is gonna kind of just raise your blood pressure quite a bit, I'll say. And then if your scientist fails to use the analyst role, that didn't come up for us. We had a scientist with us, but it was an NPC I was playing, and he was more there just to be a voice I could use and add some a little bit of chaos to the group too. And then finally, if a member of your crew attacks you, that's a point of stress. If a person's revealed to be an android, we had a synthetic at our team, so that was they got a point of stress on that side too. Or if you encounter certain creatures or locations determined by the GM. So this isn't GM's. Put this in your back pocket. This is a kind of a good one. I had a couple stress and a couple panic checks on this one too. They're great just to ramp up the tension. And this gets a lot of times with like TTRPG players, especially if they're coming from like 5e or like another heroic fantasy system, it can sometimes be a little bit harder because in those systems, their players or a lot of PCs rarely ever show fear. But for this is a system where while you may be a Marine, like you're not used to fighting xenomorphs and crazy aliens. This is something that should be a little bit horrific, a little bit dreadful for you. And these checks, I think, are a good way to bring players back into that mind space, kind of drag them out of that heroic fantasy, and so they'll kind of buy into the horror a little bit more and kind of lean into it, making your job as a GM a little bit easier because they're buying the horror that you're selling without you having to push it on them. So I like that. I like when mechanics help support the theme of a system like that. And this, in my opinion, did a good job of that. So that's stress. But when you, as we mentioned, if you get that face hugger symbol, that 1 on the stress dice, and it happens it happened a little bit more than I expected with our players. I'm not sure if they had bad luck or if they were just getting that stress on there. You roll a panic roll. And with the panic roll, you roll a d6 and add your current stress level to it. With a lot of them being like pretty cool, like one of our players, like just Azul kept their cool like throughout the whole thing. I don't think they got one bad panic roll, but other players they got some pretty nasty ones, depending on how that stress roll goes and how much stress you've already got piled on you. So now we already mentioned rolling a 1 on your stress dice. There's a couple other ways you can get it too. If you witness a friendly creature suffering certain panic effects, and they'll mention it too in there for the panic effects if other players have to make a panic roll or if they get stressed or whatever may happen there. A lot of them did cause other stresses for the players who were unaffected on that side. If you ever get pinned down by a ranged attack, if you're attacked by a strange alien creature you've never seen before, we did a couple of those because this is before xenomorphs and facehuggers became common knowledge in the alien universe. So both of those popped up. The crew had to roll a panic roll and see how they did. Or if a truly horrific event occurs as determined by the GM. So those are good ones to use. And the nice thing, I like how both for the stress and panic, they gave a tool just as the GM to apply as needed. Because sometimes you need to do orcs attack, or in this case, aliens attack, or something terrible happens. Bring your players back online, make them roll that panic check, make them roll, get some stress, kind of redirect them right back into the horror of this whole situation. So, couple things on this side I do want to call out. So for stopping panic, usually panic the effects just go for one turn. Some are immediate, some go for that one turn, and after that turn is over, you're good to go on that side. You're usually back to normal. But otherwise, if somebody wants to go through and cure you of it, they can make it a command check. On a successful check, they'll end the effects of whatever panic roll you got. Or if you are broken. If you get beat down, remember, we're broken from a mechanics episode, you hit 0 HP. That cures you of your panic stuff. So if you're near death on that side, probably kind of a clear moment on that side to get back in and start making moves and hopefully survive it. Also, for every turn, and remember, they've got 3 different measures of time: round, which is 5 to 10 seconds; turn, which is 5 to 10 minutes; and then shift, which is like 6 hours. Each turn, so that 5 to 10 minute block, will help reduce stress as long as you're in a relatively safe area. So the hard part is that relatively safe area on that side. You just have to make it secured from enemies as far as you know. So it's definitely one of the ones you can have a conversation with your GM about, and kind of make sure you can get some time to take that breather, which I think is necessary for the horror style games. So you can kind of reapply that tension, and they'll feel that lack of tension, then feel the reapplied tension, and help you ramp up the horror and the dread a little bit more. And also, we didn't have any player roll higher than I think 11 on this one, but if you did roll higher than a 13, at the end of the session, you can make an empathy roll, and that if you succeed, you're good to go. But if you fail, you get a permanent mental trauma. They've got some of those on. Actually, we'll switch over there. They got some of those on 101 with you can get a phobia, you can become an alcoholic, different things that can just really show you've went through some shit, and now you're trying to deal with it, and you're not the same as you were before. Before we move on to the horror aspects and kind of the tools they give you, I did want to show off the panic table. So Arzul, they kept getting that 1 through 6 and kept keeping it together as they went through. But you get different things like nervous twitches, trembles, dropping your items, freezing. Seek cover was the highest we got. We never got up to scream, flee, or berserk or catatonic. But it was cool. It's kind of the players some like RP tips and kind of how they could go back in and kind of flavor it. And I was really happy. All the people kind of went through, and all my players, I should say, went through and kind of bought into the situation and really RP'd their characters out. A little more comedy than I expected, but that's kind of my crew. But definitely they kind of bought into the horror aspects, which I truly appreciated. But yeah, speaking kind of a good transition on that side. This system, I really want to give a shout out to them. Check out Your Job as Game Mother within there. There's a lot of cool things they give out about how to bring horror to a tabletop game. And just even outside of that, just some of the game principles that they have too, like how to kind of help build the game. And like their favorite one, number 1, rip off the movies. Or they say riff off from the movies, but rip the movies off. Take some stuff from the movies. Like I took some dialogue, I took some things like this. Use the movies as like a crutch or a tool on that side to help build out your adventures, to really kind of see how they wrap up the horror. Because one of the things, especially if you haven't watched Aliens recently, it's a slow burn. But all 3 of the movies, it slowly kind of takes off, especially Alien and Aliens. So utilize that slow burn. Don't be so quick to throw out your xenomorphs and your face huggers. Show like something's bad what's down, and just kind of have it increasingly get escalatingly worse, and kind of build that in there. And definitely follow their game principles, like limiting their resources. The Stay in the Shadows was one of their pieces, and they just give some cool stuff here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but check this out. I know a lot of times it can be easy to overlook things like this in a system, but at least in my opinion, these are very helpful and definitely worth checking out. So I also like to, because I love playing corporate, guys. So Killing Greed, space horror. But check out the Killing Greed inside the greed inside the space horror section, because a lot of Aliens is based off corporate greed. And if you're like me, playing a greedy, selfish corporate guy is hilarious. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's my favorite character to play as a GM. So go through if you haven't done it. Play your big Wall Street fat cat who's sending out the crew to make Wayland a little bit extra cash on that side. So go through that. Definitely bring that theme in, because I think it's really good. And then you got some of the sci-fi action, it's a wonder. But this is the area I would say to check out: the stress and horror. They give you kind of like different things to focus on: the fear of the unknown, loss of control. But I really loved their 3 stages of fear, and I recommend this to, even if you're not going to play Alien that much, if you ever want to play like a horror RPG, this just gave me a lot of cool tools to bring in. Like the sense of dread, building that into terror, and then finally going into horror. And the dread is more kind of like, oh, things are not right. There's acid on the walls. Looks like there's claw marks, or people are hit by. There's no other people on this colony. Something bad's happening. Something's kind of building up. And the horror, you got to start to hear. It start to kind of become more real. The threat become more actualized, and then the dread, terror is when it starts to become more actualized. And horror, you're in it. Terrible things are happening. Can you survive on that side? And I just really like the resources they provide in here, and definitely wanted to shout this out because a lot of times it can be overlooked. So go through, if you're going to be running Alien, read those. If you're going to be running any sci-fi horror, read those. One of the other sci-fi horror games I played and haven't run it myself, Mothership. Those are like great pieces of advice if you want to run Mothership too. So check it out. I think this was just a really unique portion of the game, and I really appreciated the tools they gave, and it definitely made it easier for me to run the system, even if horror hadn't been one of my core genres to run in the past. So it was cool on that side, but definitely this is a little odd one because we've already finished our actual play. So go check out the actual play in our kind of saved videos on that side. It's Let's Play Aliens. I'll throw the link in the description. Let us know what you thought of it, what you liked, what you didn't like on the system. But also for this video, like, comment, subscribe if you haven't. Each month we pick a new game of the month and dive into it. Going over how to build PCs, core mechanics, something unique from the system, and we're going to do the same thing with Savage Worlds coming up next month. So check it out, and then stay tuned tomorrow. I know it's back to back, but we'll be dropping our review of the Alien system. Same as always, we're going over what we liked, what we didn't like, roses, buds, thorns. So buds, kind of things we liked from the system or didn't get to experience as much, we'd like to experience further. And as always, we give some tips and tricks for taking things from Alien RPG and putting into like maybe a 5e game or Pathfinder, another system that you may be running. So check that out. Like, subscribe, and until next time, everybody.